driving back and forth past Venice High School for years. And all of a sudden, around November, I sort of had the feeling that I needed to contact the school for some reason. And I didn't really know why, and I didn't really want to know why because I was busy and I thought I don't need anything else on my plate. Anyway, I called the school finally, talked to the counselor, to Jamie, and said, I want to come down and be with the students in some way. And she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't really know, but I keep driving past the school, so I think I should come. So she put me in touch with different organizations, and I got moved around, and people said, well, you don't have kids here, so you can't do anything with the students. And because I wasn't even really clear why or why I was even coming to the school. And then finally, I think I just nagged her to death, and she put me in touch with Drake, and we connected a little bit, and he said, we'll come to POPs. And I didn't know what POPs was or is, or I know what it is now. I hadn't told anybody at the school anything about me. I hadn't told them that my husband went to prison. Left me with two amazing stepdaughters who were teenagers at the time, and just what that did to our lives. So it felt just pretty remarkable when I found out what POPs was about. So it's just been a gift for me to be in here, listening, being part of this process for you all. I'm also a writer, so if anybody ever wants to reach out to me in regards to writing, I've got all kinds of fun things I can chat with you about. You know, I was going to talk about writing, but I think I'm going to talk about when my husband went to prison and what it was like for me and for my stepdaughters. It was grueling. It was just, it was like incomprehensible to me. I didn't know, none of my friends had been affiliated with prison. I didn't know that I couldn't take tweezers to Twin Towers when I went to visit my husband. I'd never been frisked before. I went from having a man who I loved and touched and kissed and was part of my life to somebody who was given life. And you don't fall out of love with somebody overnight. He fought his case and he didn't spend the rest of his life in prison, but he spent a good chunk of his life in prison. And seeing what it did to my stepdaughters who were living with me was almost as painful as what I was going through myself. If their dad had loved them more, would he have gone to prison? If they'd been better at school, would he have gone to prison? If they'd listened to him more, would he have gone to prison? If they had been better behaved? The list of things that they turned on themselves about was just grueling for me to watch. If I'd been a better wife, would he have gone to prison? If I had listened more, if I had cooked better, if I hadn't nagged so much, if I hadn't made him do his own laundry, would he have gone to prison? Right? Everything. The shame, not telling anybody, not telling my friends. Sitting around with a group of women who were in their 40s and 50s who were divorced, and they're all talking about why they're divorced. Their husband ran off with someone. I would have taken that. Their husband started doing drugs or drinking again. I would have taken that. When they come to me, oh, my husband's in prison. And the looks. Why didn't you know he was that man before you married him? How could you have put your stepkids through that? Why didn't you leave him when there were problems? Why did you stay so long? And then there were the women who, you know, looked at me like there was fundamentally something wrong with me at my core, that I would love a man that would go to prison. And then I went home thinking there was fundamentally something wrong with me, that I still loved him. Guilt that I divorced him when he was in prison. Guilt I'd married him in the first place. Oh my God, the list went on. The shame, the guilt. And then one day I came home. I opened the front door and my stepkids were laughing. It was only about 3 months after their dad had gone. And they were laughing, and there was music playing. And I wondered what had happened. Like, why could they be laughing? I came in, they looked really shame-filled. Like, how could they be laughing? Somehow I reflected back to them, like it wasn't okay to laugh. That They should be mourning for their dad more. So we had this long conversation that day about why we all felt so bad and how we could help each other feel better. Music was a big part of it. We played a lot of music, we danced a lot in our house, and we wrote. We wrote and wrote and wrote. And we wrote until sort of we flushed our tears, our shame, our anger, our rage. My kids are mixed race. They wrote about that, they wrote about me, they wrote about the fact I talk different to them, I look different to them, what it felt like to go to Wayside Jail with me. Yeah, we wrote a lot. We wrote a lot about a lot of things, which was why kind of being involved with POPs was so amazing to me, because it's a writing program and I'm published and I write poetry and I know the power of writing. And my girls have done really well, really well. They started talking about it, you know, they started realizing it had nothing to do with them, that they couldn't have loved him anymore, that him going to prison had nothing to do with them, that there was nothing fundamentally wrong or that they need to change or fix about themselves, that what their dad did that put himself in prison was about him. It was nothing to do with me, it was nothing to do with them. That was his life story. Did it impact us? Absolutely. Did it bring us to our knees as a family? Absolutely. But it wasn't about them, and there was nothing about them that needed to be fixed or changed or healed or resolved. And there was nothing about them that he took away when he went to prison. They were still perfect and beautiful inside before he went and after he went. And that was a really important piece for me, was the realization that it was nothing to do with me. And we didn't have to be angry anymore when we realized that. We didn't have to be so rage-filled. We could talk about it more. And now they're doing great. One of them does commercials on TV. She's doing really well. She lives downtown. The other one worked as a nanny for a director in the entertainment industry, not because she had any experience at all, but just because she was a great kid. She was 19 when she got her nanny job. It was just going to be a part-time job at the weekends. She didn't feel like she could really do anything else. She was just finishing the adult center on Lincoln here because she dropped out of school. When she dropped out of school, she went back to the adult education center on Lincoln Boulevard. She graduated and she got a scholarship because someone thought and saw how hard she worked and how well she wrote about her life. She then got this nanny job, which was just going to be a couple of days a week at the weekends. Then they hired her full-time and they fired the British nanny that had gone to English nanny school. Yeah, and they hired her not because she had any experience, none at all. I just said to this guy, she's a really good kid, 19, she got hired. For the last 12 years, she's been working for him, and now she works for him as his personal assistant on set. She just came back from location in Hawaii. No experience, guys. No experience. She just learned how to be herself. She knew that in the face of what had happened to her, it had nothing to do with her. She could go out there into the world and she could make the life she wanted for herself, and she has. Both of them have. If you ask them now what was the worst thing that ever happened to them, they're not going to say that their dad was given life for going to prison. They're going to tell you probably that it was one of the most painful things that ever happened to them, but it changed their life in a good way, because what came out of it was the fact they got to look at themselves differently in the world. So I don't want to just sit up here and tell you about my story unless you want to hear more. But if you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have, or if you want me to talk more about it, I will.
You talked about the laughing, and it almost felt like that wasn't appropriate. Didn't part of you feel like...
You know what, I think they thought it was. I think when they saw me, they were like, oh my God, in the face of our mom, you know, I'm their stepmom, but we shouldn't be okay about this. It was beautiful for me. I asked them, what's the difference between now and when I came in? And the only thing that was different was their thinking. That's the only thing that had changed. And we realized that the only time we felt lousy was when we were thinking about how awful it was that their dad was in prison. So if we stopped thinking about that, if we just got on with living, and we used it. I mean, my God, I have written so many poems about their dad going to prison. You know, poems that have been published about their dad going to prison, published about, you know, what it feels like to be a stepmom, you know, I had to stay married to him because their mom was trying to get them back. And the only way I could keep the girls with me was to keep married to him so I could keep his visitation. until they turned 18, and then they could choose whether, I think one of them was 17, and they could choose to stay with me. And then she came after me for, you know, alimony. How bizarre is that? You know, trust me, I had some writing to do about that. But it's not like I don't want to take anything away. You know, it hurt like a mother. I called my mom and she's like, what do you need? And she'd never been a mother, my mother. My God. She says, what do you need? I said, I need you to come. It was the first time in her life she'd ever been there. I was, what, like, it was the year 2000. He went to prison. I'm 58 now, so you can work out how old I was. But I was old, and my mom had never been there. And she was suddenly there. I mean, what a gift that was. She suddenly was like, I think I know how to be a mum finally. I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go to America and I'm going to take care of my step-grandchildren and my daughter.
How long did she stay?
2 months until I kicked her out. I was like, I woke up one morning, I'm like, I'm done, Mom. And she knew I was done. She knew we were all done. She just kept putting food in front of us, right? She's a writer and a painter, so she just kept putting food in front of us, doing her painting, writing stuff, telling the girls, write it out, keep writing it out.
And do you have that writing that the girls did?
We burned a lot of it. We did little ceremonies outside, and we just kept burning our rage away. We'd go down to Venice Beach, you know, and we would, Manhattan Beach, where you can have the fire pits, and we would burn stuff. I burned his hair. He sent me a care parcel. I mean, who wants his ponytail? I mean, I was like, burned that. I felt terribly guilty burning his hair. It was his pride and joy, you know, but I didn't need a great big ponytail. We burnt the letters from him to us. We just kept letting it go, you know. We just didn't want to keep holding on to the whole story about it all. Didn't mean we were letting go of the love. In fact, the more we let go of all that stuff, the more we loved him. And then it was just love. Didn't matter what he'd done. It was just, you know, the essence of who he was no different. He was a beautiful man. He just made some really shitty decisions that impacted a lot of people. But hey, that's his life. It didn't have to be our lives. So yeah, we burnt a lot, yeah.
How did your stepdaughters, what were the changes in their life after their father went in with their friends, school?
Well, one of them dropped out of school. You know, she couldn't even be around people for a while. You know what, honestly, we were in shock for a year. And so it was just about kind of coming together and trying to be okay. I think the writing helped, you know. I mean, I think me making them write all the time. We didn't visit him very often once he got sentenced. I wouldn't take them there. I just wanted them to they felt that it was the whole of their lives was their dad going to prison. It was everything. Every thought they had was about it. Every feeling they had was about all their thinking. All I wanted was for them to have some areas of life that had nothing to do with their dad, where we could, you know, spend time as a family where we weren't thinking about him.
So were there stages of grief, anger, because you said 1 year in shock?
Well, I think we honestly, I know there's supposed to be the 7 stages of grief, and I've taught a lot about this, but we were doing all 7 at the same time. And that was the bizarrest thing, you know. We were super happy one day, and we were in acceptance, and then we were in total denial, you know. I mean, I would still go to the grocery store and buy enough food for him as well. It was like I wished he'd died. Honestly, I wish he was dead. We could have had a funeral. People would have bought food and flowers, and I could have mourned him. Right? I could have mourned my marriage. I could have said what a great man he was, and we could have all been so proud of this guy that, I don't know, had got hit by a bus or something. But no, he was there in prison. We were sending him care parcels. I was sending him money that he was sending to some woman in Arkansas so she could come visit him. But I kept sending him money, yeah.
What did he say after you guys found out?
I didn't do it. He's in Van Nuys prison. I mean, Van Nuys jail. I didn't do it. The police are on the phone saying to me, we think you're involved. We need to come in. I mean, I could have, anyway, it was, yeah. He was in denial and denial and denial, and it wasn't my fault. And then finally, you know, then all the sorries. I mean, he went through his 7 stages, you know, of grief, denial and rage. It was the institution. It was his parents' fault. It was my fault. We used to live on a boat, right, in the marina. It was my fault because I moved. His girls wanted to come and live with us. Of course, I was going to make space. We moved into a house. I took his dream away of sailing around the world. So it was my fault. I felt it was my fault for a long time.
What was the crime? What happened?
Well, he got 3 strikes thrown at him because when he was under 21, he had a couple of felonies. And then he did an aggravated extortion with a client of mine in the entertainment industry with information I had told her about him. So, you know, they had rights to think that perhaps I was involved, you know.
So this was, did you know about any of the stuff in the past?
Yes.
Because you knew about that?
Yeah, I mean, I met him when he was older. You know, this was when he was 17. He was 17, yeah.
So this one thing happens and then all of a sudden we're...
One thing happened and he was given life. Yeah. All right. Anyway, guys, at any point, if anybody wants to chat with me, I'm going to be here on Wednesdays. I'm happy to chat. I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to help with writing, anything else.